but she was one of the most active participants in the urban girls movement in Botkyrka and became a very valuable voice contributing to the Her City Toolbox. Yeah, there I see you. So welcome. I think it would be very nice if you, with your perspective, could explain a bit on how the girls were engaged in the process in Botkyrka.
Yes, so we were engaged in the process in different kinds of ways. Starting from the walks, where we were able to visually show what we would like to change and make it better. We also used method kits, which helped us brainstorm our ideas and give them more depth to better understand why we wanted certain things and why we wanted to change them. Another tool that was used was Minecraft. Minecraft helped us visualize the ideas. And since it's more of a game, we had no limitations, and that made our ideas more fun. And also being able to see them made it even better. We also had to engage with experts, but in a very different way than I've experienced before. Usually, in my previous experience, experts usually don't like to listen. And it could be because they have too much knowledge. And sometimes the knowledge can be from the wrong perspective. So the reason why I feel this way is because we, us girls, view things from how we engage with the city rather than how we are expected. And that's also something that I like how Ebba Östlin took in our voices and made sure that one of our ideas were tested.
So that's pretty kind of, fascinating changes that you and the other girls experienced. Have this kind of then have influenced on your view on your role as a citizen, also in other processes or?
Yeah, I would like to say that it has changed my views on participation. And when it comes to ideas, I'm not the person that would usually bring them up, but this had made me want to participate more. And also that fact that when we participate, we also feel more safe because we are changing our environment. And that's also something that I've taken with me from this project, that I will participate the best way I can.
Well, I mean, I must say that I think that the pilot project in Botkyrka was very successful, and it's of course very nice that we are now in the process of starting new projects around the world. Johannesburg being one of them. Uh, would you have any advice to give to the guys in Johannesburg when they are now uh, trying to do something similar that you did a couple of years ago?
I mean, since the project was so successful, I think just doing the same thing would be perfect. And I all I can do is encourage to listen so that more girls can experience what I have experienced, which is to be heard. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you can stick around, because I think that there is going to be quite a number of questions in the chat box, and some of them will most likely go to you as one of the grassroots that participated. What we're going to do now is that we are going to, you remember that initially I said that this is a partnership between you and Habitat and the think tank Global Utmaning. And the CEO of Global Utmaning is Tove Ahlström, and being one of Sweden's most influential think tank leader, I think, at least in terms of sustainability. She's a civil engineer that previously worked in many different places on sustainability strategies in the private sector, but has now been the CEO for some time for Global Utmaning. thank you very much for being here, Tove. The screen is now yours.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Ebba and Monet, for your insightful words. I have to agree, well-planned and gender-inclusive urbanization is of utmost importance for achieving sustainability. And that is why her city is such a welcomed toolbox. People increasingly live in cities. Urban areas are already home to 55% of the world's population. And that figure is expected to grow until 68% by the year 2050. Already today, cities count for 70% of the CO2 emissions, but only covers 2% of the world's surface. Urbanization brings enormous challenge, not at least in terms of inequality. When cities are poorly or unplanned, it is often followed by widening gaps between the cities and the rural areas, urban centers and outskirts, and between different groups in the society. 1 billion of the world's population live in informal urban settlements. With rapid and unplanned urbanization, there is a predominant risk that disadvantaged urban dwellers will increase drastically. Among the most vulnerable are young women in socioeconomic disadvantaged areas. Research shows that girls and women do not use public spaces in the same extent as boys and men. From the age of 8, 80% of the public spaces are dominated by boys, while girls express they feel significantly more insecure and excluded. In general, women and girls benefit less from urbanization and urban spaces than men and boys. In fact, women and girls in cities will face a range of specific barriers and vulnerabilities in the form of gender-based discrimination, such as gender inequality, violence against women, poverty, unpaid care work, limited control over assets, unequal participation in public and private decision-making, as well as barriers to education, employment, housing, and basic services. There is a lack of knowledge in participatory urban planning and design, particularly involving vulnerable groups in urban development processes. Research has shown that participatory urban development with girls and young women, local actors, as well as multi-level decision makers creates opportunities for more inclusive, equal, sustainable development. Thus, her city provides an opportunity to build capacity on a larger scale. Her city provides municipal professionals, urban actors, local decision makers with a solid toolbox for mainstreaming youth, gender, socioeconomic perspective by strategically involving girls and young women in urban planning and design. On this day, the International Women's Day, I am proud to present to you the Her City Toolbox. Our ambition with this toolbox is to promote sustainable cities, empower girls and young women, and to contribute to the local implementation of the 2030 agenda. Our experience shows that Her City approach does not only promote a handful of SDGs, but in fact contributes to all the sustainable development goals on a local level. The open and digital accessible toolbox platform, Her City, will ensure cities for all. So I encourage you all, please let her guide you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tove. You really kind of underlined why we need this project. And I also think that you, in a very nice way, you underlined the fact that it's a multi-sector approach which is needed, and the equality for women in an urban world. I mean, it is really progress for all. One thing that I hear that people have been asking is actually, why does a Swedish think tank come to promote a global program like this one?
And I mean, this is the basic foundation for all the sustainable development forward. So if we are serious of solving the climate crisis, then we should build together with the young voices of young women and girls. They will come up with solutions that will get us to the right place forward.
That's what it will do, of course.
Yes.
Well, thank you very, very much. I think that we have kind of nibbled a little on what Her City is already, but now we will watch a just completed short video which explains the toolbox a little more in detail. So please, Nairobi, can you load the video?
Have you ever lived in a city that wasn't built for you? Have you ever struggled to get around a place? Have you ever felt insecure in your neighborhood? Have you ever struggled to find basic services? Have you ever felt unwelcome? Then Her City is for you. Too often, the city does not work for girls. It's unsafe, dirty, unwelcome, and inaccessible. This is how it typically looks like in many cities around the world. This is why we have developed the Her City Toolbox to involve girls and young women in the planning, design, and construction of tomorrow's sustainable cities that work for everyone. I will show you how it works. Visit hercity.unhabitat.org. Register. Click Start. The Toolbox follows a unique process containing 9 building blocks as a digital guideline on how to co-plan cities from a girl's perspective. The Toolbox is divided into 3 phases to illustrate the urban development process. Phase 1. Assessment. It includes Block 1. Stakeholder engagement. The purpose of Block 1 is to identify and recruit stakeholders and target groups to participate throughout the project. Block 2. Citywide assessment. Block 2 aims to assess the state of public spaces at the city scale and to identify which areas are in most urgent need of improvement. Block 3. Site-specific assessment. Block 3 provides a methodology to assess and measure the quality of a selected open public space and its 5 minutes walking radius. Phase 2. Design. It includes Block 4. Analyzing challenges. Block 4 formalizes brainstorming and is particularly suitable when professionals are working together with non-professionals. Block 5. Designing ideas. Block 5 turns the ideas into designs for the new public space using a participatory digital tool, the computer game Minecraft. Block 6. Recommendations for action. Block 6 prioritizes among the designs, crafts guidelines, and develops recommendations in multi-stakeholder groups. Phase 3. Implementation. It includes Block 7. Action plans. In this block, the plan for the public space is set through a participatory process similar to a client-architect meeting. Block 8. Sharing results. Block 8 communicates the results with the community, decision makers, and a wider audience. Block 9. Implementation and follow-up. The final block aims to gather feedback on the process from participants, follow up on the implementation, and provide an overall evaluation of the quality of the public space 6 months after construction. Each block leads you through a number of activities with detailed steps to follow in order to deliver on your Her City project. Each step contains digital tools such as checklists, calendars, agendas, manuals, forms, boards, apps, templates, surveys, and visualization services that will help you on the way to reach the expected results. As a guidance, The majority of the toolbox is intended for the project team. When girls and stakeholders are participating, the activity is marked with a white star. And when they are the main users of a tool, it's marked with a black star. You can access your data at any time by clicking on Results. Remember what the space looked like at the beginning? What is the likely result of the Hercity process? A place where everyone thrives, that is safe, has good livelihood opportunities, and is ecologically sustainable. That's what Hercity could look like. Let her guide you. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Hercity Toolbox and hashtag Hercity.
Right. Now that's kind of amazing, actually. I mean, town planning being such a complex and completely impossible process to understand can be as structured as shown in this video. That is an achievement. I think that it's, of course, so important to realize that the girls in this case are not looked down upon like some users, but they are rather the experts who knows how one should look upon the future and what is needed. If you have comments and questions to this, just please write in the chat box, and then we'll try to look at this a little later on in the program. Now we know maybe a little more what Hercity is, but let's talk a little to some people that has started to work with it. I would like to welcome Jasmine Dinat, who is town and regional urban planner, trained in Wits University, Witwatersrand University in Johannesburg, and she has actually worked for the Metropolitan Municipality and Joburg Development Agency for many years, with a strong focus on participation, exactly, youth perspective, and these kind of approaches. And I think that she's also been part of research processes. Welcome to our little session. You have, even though everything this year has been kind of a little delayed or at least changed because of the COVID, I think that you start to have some initial experiences from Hercity process in Johannesburg. So could you maybe talk a little about how this was set up? Regarding kind of how you structured the project in conjunction with procurement and other aspects.
Thank you, Thomas, and hello, everybody. Thank you for the honor of speaking today. It's an exciting occasion. I'm thinking about the word procurement, and it's making me smile because in the South African context, as an urban practitioner, it's very rarely associated with excitement. But this time it is, because we are determined to do things differently for rolling out this project. So we were lucky enough to be working with UN Habitat and Global Utmanum in the past, and we felt that Diepsloot informal settlement in Johannesburg, which is a hotspot for gender-based violence, one of the top hotspots in the country actually, is a perfect place to try and implement the toolbox. When you ask about procurement, our approach is going to be different, and we want to push the boundaries. Ideally, we'll be working to get an all-female team of built environment professionals. But what's really important about that is not so much the competencies on the team, but that the scope of work is very carefully designed to prioritize the girls as the client. So the professional team is expected to deprivilege their technical expertise and instead privilege the voices of the real experts. And the real experts are the girls. The real expert in understanding a street in Diepsloot and how it feels and smells and is structured is a 14-year-old girl who has to walk 100 meters at night to buy a loaf of bread. And every step of the way, her public environment renders her vulnerable. And unless we're listening to the girls more than the professional team, I think we'll be missing the point. So the scope of work is set up in that way. And another important aspect of the way in which our procurement is structured is that at every step of the way in using the toolbox, the girls are mentored and upskilled in a way that they are exposed to the built environment professionals and the types of work they do. They start to understand how a civil engineer comes into the picture and what that profession is all about. They get exposed to urban design. They get exposed to media and communication and public events. So in that sense, they're also getting a rich experience and having conversations with professionals along the way. So we deliberately want our procurement to do that and not just be about tick box procurement exercise.
But talking about participation processes, they can obviously be done in very many different ways. And what is the added value, according to you, of a toolbox when you are gathering data and are using different tools in the participation processes?
So I think a toolbox, even in a global setting for our profession as urban placemakers, is important. But I think even more significant for us is the South African context of stakeholder engagement. We come from a very dark past of people's voices, the majority voices being silenced and not being valued at all. And the conventional, what we found is that the conventional ways of engaging stakeholders in community, of extreme poverty, desperation, is generating a lot of frustration and anger, because the conventional community hall type of meeting where the architect is doing a PowerPoint presentation, it doesn't afford dignity and voice to people. Mm. So this is a process that, like Monet spoke about before, it listens, and it needs to listen far more than it speaks. Far more than professionals speak. We will be listening to the girls. And it inverts the power relationship completely to afford the rightful experts the platform to lead us and to direct us. And it's the only real hope. These kinds of processes, whether they're with girls, whether they're with other vulnerable groupings, these kinds of processes are the only real way we're going to deepen social and spatial impact and be more kind of impactful or directed in the way that we spend public money to create public environments. So it's about responsiveness, and also it's about extending the sustainability of our interventions. This project for us will not be about a big mega project. It won't be about grand political kind of statements. It will be about the everyday lives of girls who are extremely vulnerable. And it will be about small incremental changes to the environment that will make a difference to that walk of 100 meters to buy a loaf of bread.
Thank you very much. It's going to be a real pleasure for us to actually follow the development of your project.
as for us. Thanks.
So we will then move from South Africa to Jordan and talk a little to Lubna Shaheen, who is Urban Program Officer at UN Habitat's Jordan office. She's a project manager that is very skilled in sustainable development and urban planning, and has worked with community and social services, and is presently responsible for working with multiple programs in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and is actually also involved in UN Habitat's component of a joint UN program which is called Eliminating Violence Against Women. It's a really pleasure to have you here, and I would just start off by saying that would it be possible for you to tell us a little about the assessment that has been based on girls and women's perspective in Gaza and the West Bank, and maybe you can do that on different levels, kind of nation, city, and site-specific levels.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and I'm glad to be with you here and share our experience from Palestine. Actually, the starting point, like when we decided to conduct like this, like citywide public space assessment, it started when we were designing like the Haya joint program that focuses on eliminating violence against women and girls in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And back then in 2017, we looked and we found there's a complete like absence of like verifiable data and sound analysis related to kind of like sexual harassment or like violence against women in public spaces in Palestine, upon which we could actually build our intervention in that program. So therefore we decided like in order to start like with this program, we need to have like a database. We need to learn more about the actual situation on the ground in terms of women's safety in public spaces. And then we can decide what kind of interventions need to be done later on. And therefore, we decided to kind of like conduct, I would say kind of not nationwide, but almost, because like we had limitations in terms of the budget. So we selected kind of like 8 cities across the West Bank and Gaza Strip to conduct like the citywide public space assessments. And jointly, like with the Ministry of Local Government and like the targeted municipalities, we planned like this assessment. And what was interesting actually, when we're looking at like the citywide assessments and the findings at the city level, the information that we were able to collect were really very informative. And we had like a full overview in terms of like the physical and the socioeconomic conditions for each kind of like surveyed public space, and what is actually needed to enhance like the accessibility, the safety, the inclusivity of these public spaces. So that was like really kind of like a very, very, very important for us like to start our program. And what was also significant in that sense is also like that we were able to document like women's and girls' firsthand experiences in public spaces. Because part of the like citywide assessment, you have to kind of conduct some interviews, direct interview with the users, and including like, okay, men and women, but women particularly, they shared their personal experiences like moving around in public spaces. So that was also kind of very important and gave us like really ideas about what is really needed and what's like special for different public spaces around the city. So based on these findings, we had like a list of like the priority public spaces that needs intervention to become like safer and more inclusive. So that's also helpful for us, but also for the municipalities for their plans for the future when they want to upgrade and enhance like these public spaces. And we were able also to support the municipalities based on the findings to kind of like develop like a city strategy or implementable strategies for public spaces, and to integrate like these strategies within the municipal kind of plans and strategies for the coming years. and that also will be included in terms of like their budgeting, their operations, the maintenance, so kind of a list of process that goes along the way. Part of a Haya Joint program, we wanted also kind of like to pilot some intervention, actual intervention, to also show the municipality how they can design public spaces that they are safe and inclusive in a participatory way, meaning by engaging the community and engaging women and girls throughout the process. So from the findings like of the priority public spaces, we selected one pilot project in each targeted municipality. And then we collaborated with like the local universities and conducted the site-specific assessments for these sites, for these locations, because we wanted also to have more in-depth understanding for the conditions before we start like the design process. So we looked at like performance of each specific public space, and in terms, for example, of its quality, of its like in terms of comfort, safety, accessibility, the green environment, what are like the users of this public space, who are the users at the different times of the day, of the week, etc. And based on that findings, we now actually currently started like the actual design of these public spaces. So we don't have the final design, but hopefully within the coming couple of months, we will also have the actual designs for these specific public spaces. But it's worth mentioning, and I have to say that the whole process was a learning process for us as a team and also for our partner municipalities and the staff, because at different steps of the process, we had trainings, we had like capacity building sessions, we shared all the tools and the guidelines. So we wanted to ensure that this is not only kind of like a one-time project that is implemented and then finished. No, we wanted to kind of institutionalize the tools within the municipalities so that after the closure of the project, basically, they can replicate the process again in their own in the future.
Tell me, when you are dealing with this kind of gathering of data, isn't the fact that it's very often quite a number of different conflicts between different groups, be it women or men, or be it pedestrian or cars, or be it culture, heritage or modernization. But how do you think that the value of a toolbox can help you to negotiate such conflicts?
Well, I think it's the process itself, like to have a participatory process that allows everyone to express like their point of view, their needs, where they come from, and have a discussion and like to assess what are like the advantages, disadvantages of each view. And then you can reach kind of like consensus at the end between the different actors and between the different conflicting views. Because like without having this process, and I tell you, it won't be solved in one session or in one time, or you cannot even like make everyone happy. But at the end of the day, when you listen to everyone and when you rationalize with them, I'm sure at the end, and we went through different discussions between, for example, you have like the merchants who would like to display their products on the sidewalks, whereas you have the pedestrians and mothers with strollers, they have to go on the streets to like and jeopardize their safety to be able to walk. So when you have the discussion and you present this, at the end, you can see that people are responsive and they get convinced and they cooperate because you engage them in the process. And like we utilize different tools like to engage these people, even like when you go and have urban cafes and just like informally bring people together and discuss with them and explain. That was very helpful. So, but also it's important to say that having a toolbox that combines all the tools, that combines all like the guidelines in one place, that professionals and like the municipal staff or different actors can access them at any time I think that will help them kind of like to make the process more systematic and to engage the people along the process from the very beginning. And that will reduce kind of like the conflict over the way throughout the process.
Yeah, I think that we really do agree on that approach. Thank you very much for participating today, and let's turn to one of my former colleagues at UN Habitat, Laura Petrella. She's an architect, urban planner, trained at the Istituto Architettura in Venezia. And she has had many different posts at UN Habitat for over 20 years, I think. And it's today chief of planning, finance, and economy section. And that's where the Global Public Space Program is housed. She has a range of experiences in urban development. And Laura, thank you for during this very hectic day, spending some time with us. Can I ask you, why is actually UN Habitat providing this open digital platform with tools for inclusive and sustainable cities? Are you muted?
Of course, there is a plane coming in this moment. Sorry. So no, thank you for having me in this discussion. And well, I would sum up this question saying that because this is our job actually, and it is our mandate. But I can elaborate a little bit more. I don't think I need to present what UN Habitat does, etc. But maybe, and it has been also mentioned in the beginning, what really moves us as UN Habitat is the opportunity that we see and the task that we have to help shaping cities for sustainability and inclusion and poverty reduction and climate change response, no? And we know that globally we have a huge amount of city space that is still to be built, or we estimate that is about 50% of the urban space that will be needed in 30 years is not yet there, is not yet being built. And also we know that a lot of the existing cities need quite a big makeover in order to become more sustainable, address climate change, etc. So this is a huge opportunity on one side, which I think the COVID pandemic has also reaffirmed. I mean, we have seen not only that cities need a lot of changes, but also that they are possible. I mean, we have seen that street redesign, for instance, or the 15 minutes city concept have become quite popular now and are being implemented, and also many changes in the way cities are commuting, citizens are commuting, etc. So I think we now see also that this is feasible, not only desirable. And but we also have seen, and just to keep to the COVID experience, a lot of these things are really being top down. No? While we welcome also the top down, actually, we also believe that the opportunity for these changes to really benefit the women and the girls are major, and that they can be best tapped, this opportunity, when there is a possibility for the women and the girl to actually have their voice heard in these processes, and their needs taken into account much more profoundly, let's say, in the processes. So what we know is that there is not so much capacity actually around the cities, particularly in many cities of the developing world, but also, as we have seen also in Sweden, to really have the processes and the changes taking into account the voices of groups that are not used to be involved, that themselves keep to the margins maybe, but also that are often forgotten. So for us, making the tools and the lessons from the places where this has been tried and where this has been working is a very important contribution to make the urban development different, to change the way this has been made, and it's actually very much central to our mandate. And the city platform actually is made available to everyone that is embarking in planning, designing, and implementation processes at city level, exactly with the objective of giving the tools, as has been mentioned, but also the opportunity. I think it's very important to share and discuss the experiences, and finally, let's say, access even additional support if needed and if desired. So I think the issue of gender perspective and mainstreaming in urban development is not new, but we have to admit that is not progressed that much in the 50 years that Habitat has been around, almost 50 years that Habitat has been around, and it is still quite a very let's say, difficult process, and it continues facing setbacks and challenges from many points of view. So we sort of think that as we on one side understand more and more that it is very important that let's say the voices are brought into the discussion because they actually benefit the sustainability and also the overall urban quality. We are particularly aware that there are not so many tools and not so many experienced, well documented, etc., to do so. So I think this is really the objective of working with this toolkit, and I think it's very interesting, this alliance also between northern and southern cities, trying to find a common ground, which is very interesting, so that we can actually build a more complete urban puzzle where there is, let's say, the picture can be more detailed, more rich, and eventually also more sustainable. I know, I mean, we have a long way to go, and we are happy that this toolkit can use, digital technology, can use a sort of, we really aim also sort of wholesale mechanisms that can bring more cities on board, more activists, more professionals to use it, adapt it to their context, and so that we finally achieve cities that reflect the needs and the perspective of the girls and the women, as well as the other groups, because it's not an exclusive tools. No, it's not a set of exclusive tools. They are also very much good to involve other groups, etc. So I think this is our perspective on this work.
Yes, I think I can really agree on that. That the fact that this toolbox can actually be used to any kind of disadvantaged group, and support the work in creating all these new cities or these new urban areas that you actually talked about, and the fact that the amount of difficulties that we have in urban areas is kind of growing at the same time as the urbanization grows. It's going to put municipalities into kind of several very difficult situations, and there we hope that tools like Her City could actually be useful to create better, resilient and sustainable cities. Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you also for pushing the issue of poverty as you did initially, because I think that is really a very important aspect. We will move on, and what has been mentioned was that Minecraft has been used in the process very successfully, and I am very happy to be able to present Didrik Kvarnström. to you, who actually is a director at the Block by Block Foundation, the development foundation that uses works with the connection between UN Habitat and Minecraft. She has been on the board there since it started. I think that was 2015, and has numerous degrees from different universities. But she is now working as a general manager in the Xbox division as Microsoft, and there she is responsible for product development and community engagement for Minecraft in education. And this obviously is a very interesting connection with Minecraft as a planning tool. So thank you, Deirdre, for making yourself available very early this morning. Could I ask you if you could elaborate a little on how you can combine youth and tech to be a tool for social transformation?
Sure. Thanks, Thomas. With a video game, it's obviously very welcoming environment for youth, and it's a place that can bring youth into a participatory process where they might not otherwise join in. So just the interest of this very popular consumer video game, but it's really so much more than that. Using Minecraft as a tool for inclusive planning and design, we see an increase in the overall participatory process. Video games are very straightforward and easy to navigate by design, and it's quite satisfying to iterate in a video game environment. So this means people don't have to have experience reading blueprints or architectural drawings, or understanding some of these more abstract concepts. They can actually be in the video game environment, moving around, navigating in first person, so they see their community and their world as they would see it if they were walking around a neighborhood. It creates a real sense of place and a sense of empathy, so that their ideas and what they contribute to the projects is so much more impactful. If it's a merchant, they can see the space and recognize different landmarks and actually identify and communicate what they need in order to make their cities more livable and safer in many cases. They also don't need to be so precise in doing that. So they might identify a safety feature like needing lighting or a fence in an area that's not safe. And they can choose from the Minecraft inventory in order to place that. So it's very quick to translate their idea into something that can be communicated with the city planners. They also, the technology itself can really overcome barriers. Things like language, you can use translation in order to bridge across language barriers. Also, encouraging just language and communication across different barriers, socioeconomic barriers. People with disabilities can have access through some of the tools in the game in order to communicate and participate. So we can start to address not only gender equity, where girls might not feel comfortable speaking up and communicating through the game, they can express their ideas, but also people who have disabilities can connect through the game experience and have that be more of an equalizer in what they want to share.
But I know that you are using Minecraft in very many different kind of educational surroundings in a way. But is it really a tool that you feel that everyone can adapt to, or is it not in a way a little excluding if you are not not that techie?
So I've been for the last six years, I guess now, working to bring Minecraft into primary and secondary education, into the traditional school day. It can be something that teachers feel unsure about. It's maybe more the idea of bringing a video game into their teaching practice and into their classrooms is intimidating, because often the students or the youth know more about it than they do. But what we've seen is once they try it, they become the biggest evangelists for it. So they see the students are engaged, they're curious about learning, they're working on complex problem solving. Often students will go beyond the scope of the assignment because they're so engaged in the process. and provides a great platform for collaboration. We also see it's a way to identify or recognize strengths that students may not display in the typical standard classroom. One of my daughters has dyslexia and ADHD, and for her, moving around a video game environment can be a really effective way to communicate her ideas that might be more difficult in a typical classroom with 25 or 30 students or through writing.
All right. Well, tell me, another thing which is kind of, I think, not very common is actually that private sector companies and in the gaming sector, so that they partner with the UN and with municipalities over the world to do public space. What's the driving force between such kind of partnering processes for you?
Yeah, I think public-private partnerships like this can be a little bit unexpected. Just the idea of using a video game like Minecraft in these public space conversations is often surprising. It's been so effective. We've now been working with UN Habitat and the Global Public Space Program, I think since 2012 altogether, from the earliest projects, and the partnership is stronger than ever. What's really helpful is the deep expertise of the teams, the local knowledge and local expertise. There are examples for the factors or the considerations to make a project successful. When we go into an area, we want to make sure that we're going to have an impact in having it be successful. Things like that might not be obvious to a private company that's working in video games or education, is land rights are incredibly important, and making sure we understand the land rights before going in and working in a space. We also, the UN Habitat team helps us identify the greatest opportunities and what kind of interventions are most likely to be successful and have the largest impact. Help to understand how to work in the informal city and work with some of the most vulnerable populations. So we can bring this tool that has so much potential, but recognize the local environment, the local conditions, and how we can have the biggest impact with it.
Thank you very much for sharing these thoughts with us, and good luck with the continued partnership with these cities, and in order to create better cities for all.
Thank you,
We
Thomas.
we have a little time to look at questions actually that you have posted in the chat box. I'll see what we have here. We have had a couple of questions from. Sorry. We've had questions from Russia on how her city can be applied and included in the city budget. And there has also been some similar question which talks about how you can scale up these processes when it comes to within the municipality. And a little more elaborating on budgets and planning, and then how you fit that into the municipality. I wonder if we could ask Jasmine to give a little comment on how this is done in Joburg.
So Thomas specifically asking about how we adapt the process for Johannesburg.
Yeah, and how it is kind of connected to the municipal budget and planning processes.
Okay, so with this particular pilot project, we've been fortunate enough to have funding for the technical design process, for the preparatory work, for the rollout of the Her City Toolbox activity, but it does require a budget for construction and implementation of the actual public space elements that come out of this process. So there's an in-kind contribution from the City of Johannesburg's budget, motivated by the JDA, and that is aimed at covering implementation. So I think the more of these kinds of processes we do, the more possibilities open up for motivating for capital budget within our municipal system. And especially if we're doing impact evaluation of this process, that the data is really important to look at what's possible in terms of budgeting in the future. So it opened doors.
And thank you. I also see questions here, which a couple of different questions, which is talking about refugees, immigrants, and about vulnerable groups. And how do you include informal sector in the processes? Lubna, maybe you have a kind of a comment on how to deal with the disadvantaged and informal.
Well, I think it's just like the whole purpose of these tools is to focus on the vulnerable groups and to try to kind of like reflect their voices and their needs in the process. And in our projects, like we tried basically to reach out to all different groups, and whether to kind of like invite them for these meetings or to go to where they kind of like exist. And to kind of like tailor our work, like to kind of like manage as much as possible to include them in the process. And in this case, for example, like in Jordan, currently, like we have a couple of projects that are implemented where like we basically try to also include refugees in the participatory process. Like one, like early summer, we had the Minecraft workshops where we had like kids and participants like from the refugee community, like Syrian refugees who are currently residing in Jordan, from the host community as well. They were also included. We have also representatives from like people with like special needs and disabilities. So all these different kind of groups were included, for example, in one of our Minecraft workshops. So this is how we try to kind of reach out to different vulnerable groups as much as possible and utilize like these tools to include these different groups in our kind of like society.
Mm. Right. Yeah, we can have a couple of questions here. Laura, I think this one is for you, actually. This is not likely to be the first toolbox UN Habitat has produced over the last 50 years. In what way does one relate to the previous ones?
Thank you. Yes. No, this is a very important point because on one side, this tool has a focus of some kind. Let's say it is both a public space oriented tool, although it has a very strong overall planning and design approach underneath it, and also it is focusing on girls and young women in cities. So in this aspect, it is different from other tools because it is helping us to bring together all that knowledge, all that experience that we have in Habitat, but also in other partners to deal with these two aspects of city transformation and city actors in particular. But on the other side, it also builds on many of the UN Habitat, let's say, more established tools in terms of consultation and participation, for instance, and it also links out to the finance mechanism, etc., that have in UN Habitat a very big, let's say, corpus of knowledge, but this tool makes all these quite accessible. I think that this is one of the first tools that in Habitat we have in a completely digitalized form, which is something that is pretty important for its dissemination and accessibility actually in reality. And I think the important the important thing is that it's also aiming at being inclusive of other groups. I have already said it can be actually very well adopted and used for other groups, etc. So I think it brings together the very big commitment of UN Habitat on participatory processes and consultation, with very specific focus and specific tools, and it's quite rich in that sense to enable really the specificity of girls and women as well to come out a little bit strongly, no? And this I don't think it was existing before. So we are trying to innovate and in the same time build on a very solid experience, I would say. Yeah, I think would be very interesting to have also the feedback further from more testing and more use at the local level, because the contexts are very different. I mean, Lubna is talking about the refugees context, Johannesburg as a completely different urban context, etc. So we need also to continuously adapt and make it relevant in every context and learn from these different contexts.
Thank you very much. Time is kind of running for us, and there is lots of more interesting questions that we will not be able maybe to respond to now during this little session here, but we will make sure that the replies and the discussion will go on our different media platforms. So don't worry. And we are going to keep this chat open a whole hour after the session closes, so that you could actually keep on with the discussion and put further questions there. May I, before we leave this session, may I ask if there is any one of the speakers who want to add something? Okay, not anything that you felt very urgent about there. So we are going to have concluding remarks from Håkan Juholt, which is the Swedish ambassador to the Republic of South Africa. He has been the ambassador there since September last year. He's a former journalist and been a member of Swedish Parliament for over 20 years. Was at times leader of the Social Democrats in Sweden, and he has also been ambassador to the Republic of Iceland. Thank you, Ambassador, for giving her city your priority today. I think it's very appropriate that Sweden is present during the being the only country actually which actually have a strong female foreign policy. So let me give you the floor, or rather the screen, for some reflection on this topic.
Thank you, Thomas. And let me first of all express how honored I am to celebrate this year's International Women's Day with the launch of her city urban planning digital toolbox. Seeing how this toolbox has been applied in so many different countries and circumstances makes it to me clear that it is a transferable tool that will change the lives of many for the better. There is a need for, I would say, strong partnerships that work together to address the discrimination and exclusion of women experience in cities, and at the same time offering a way forward to design cities that empower women and girls and include them in decision-making processes, urban planning and design. Everything we have seen in today's presentations speak to and reinforce values we care about, such inclusivity, innovation, and democracy. And all of us, especially you, the experts, know that historically and up to this day, cities have been planned, designed, and governed without the equal engagement of women as decision makers. The exclusion of women from urban planning and land ownership and management has many negative consequences, both for girls and boys, women and men in cities. And as women and girls make up half of the urban population, do more than half the work, do the majority of the care work, and are often subjected to sexual and gender-based violence, cities ought to be designed and built with women's and girls' participation and interests in mind. And as segregation and inequality are increasing in many parts of the world, inclusiveness in the planning process of cities and communities is becoming even more important. Only when the diverse experiences and needs of women and men are integrated into urban planning and design will it be possible to form inclusive urban planning, procedures, public spaces, and land management. Adopting a gender equality approach meant raising awareness of issues regarding power in public spaces, male violence towards women, and how the city is perceived in terms of violence, a sense of security, and accessibility. And may I also, as the final words here, take this opportunity to express that responsible politicians, responsible ambassadors, and other decision makers must encourage staff and partners to integrate gender perspectives into policies, projects, and programs for sustainable urban development. Her city, Urban Planning Digital Toolbox, will make it possible for young women to participate in concrete ways to informing decisions that affect their safety and quality of life in urban environments. And I would also like to reach out to all the girls and young women taking part in this project. Your ideas matter, and you are shaping your city for a brighter future. Urbanization continues to increase in South Africa and also in my country, Sweden. And your ideas can ensure that planning is sustainable and has foresight that considers your unique needs. So I would like just to end up by thanking UN Habitat, the independent think tank Global Utmaning, Global Challenge, and the Swedish innovation agency Vinnova for financing this very important project. As the Embassy of Sweden in South Africa, I promise you, we will support Jasmine at Johannesburg Development Agency and her counterparts in other cities that take up the challenge to ensure that they reach their goals of reaching out to young women for this initiative. So thank you all for taking part in this, and what a wonderful day to celebrate 8th of March. I love this project and I strongly support every single second of what you are doing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ambassador, for such a fantastic and strong statement. This is going to be extremely important for the project to actually have this with them when they are going into implementation. The potential of women and girls is really the platform for Her City Toolbox, and will include them in the design of the future society, as you say. We will make sure that we keep the embassy updated on the development in this program. Thank you very much. The session here is very, very soon coming to an end. We have today been reminded that cities are growing around us, that there is numerous obstacles complicating the implementation of the SDGs, and girl and woman have multiple problems and they need attention. There are luckily many of us. Today we have seen several hundred who are interested in participating in arranging for a better future. But understanding that gender equity needs attention in city development, that does not necessarily mean that you know how to do it. We can learn more and better from each other. We can simplify the processes with new tools, and including interacting with disadvantaged groups like women and girls. I think that normal city planning and governance structure can be turned into opportunities, supporting more inclusive cities. Her City is now opened and inaugurated. We have this initiative in Johannesburg, but we have also initiatives that is starting on the West Bank, Beirut, Lima, Flemingsberg, Nairobi, and more places. We are, from Her City, here to assist and support, highlight, share solutions, a kind of a movement, I think, for inclusive cities, cities for girls, and everyone else. Because we believe inclusive cities are more resilient and are more sustainable. It has been very nice to have you with us during this little launch. What is happening now? Well, Her City is initiating regional information and training sessions. The dates for these are going to be posted now in the chat as we speak, but it's going to be Middle East and Baltic region in April, Africa and Europe in May, and Asia and Latin America in June. And until that happens, you can actually interact with this program in very many ways. As I said, we will keep the chat open for another hour. You can go online and test the Her City Toolbox. You can explore the Her City manual, and you can follow Her City in social medias. The links to all these things will be in the chat right now. And in something like 6 or 8 months' time, we and our partners will reflect on how City has developed in Johannesburg and other places, as well as discuss the continuous way forward. And all of you who are registered for this webinar, you will be invited also for that session. To all the speakers and the audience today, I want to say thank you for all the enthusiasm and for having shared this time with us. Thank you also to UN Habitat and Global Utmaning staff, because they have really worked tireless to make this launch happen. Please continue the discussion, keep your distances, and stay safe. Thank you very much.